Okay. Senator Bernie Sanders was on Theo Vaughn. Is this good? Is this a banger?
He's one of my favorites. You have
one of the points I think a little bit, but
Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Theo.
I really appreciate it.
To the video?
I have some new tour dates I want to tell you.
A government dominated by big money interests, right? That's no great secret. Or you run the risk of, seeing that kind of money come against you.
Or you then have to find a lobbyist that has an interest of yours and you have to try and fight back.
Which is a pretty pathetic thing, right?
Right.
So to some degree, what you have right now, it's a funny kind of thing. It's, let's say you were running against me. It's not you against me. It's your moneyed interest versus my moneyed interest. That's what super PACs are.
Yeah.
Now, corporations cannot directly contribute to your campaign, but big money interests, billionaires.
Yeah, they just can't have direct communication with the campaign, which, by the way, ain't nobody is listening to that, okay? You just get like someone in your orbit to communicate with the PAC anyway. It's one of the biggest, like, oh God, it's such bullshit. Like, I hate the system so much. Like, who the fuck are you fooling, bro? It is just bribery. That's it.
Can contribute to a super PAC. So you have all these, what I would say to you, people watch the show here, look at the...
Yeah, Trump literally had an aide text a PAC owner on the Montana plane last week.
Ads that are on television, they'll be underneath it, you'll see paid for by supporters of the American way of life or whatever the hell it is. Understand that in most cases, these are billionaires putting money into a candidate.
So the super PAC is kind of the loophole.
Yep.
Is how they do it. So it's not directly from them.
Exactly. There are limits. All right, you wanted to contribute to my campaign. They're pretty stringent limits. You can't contribute. I think it's $5,000 to a super PAC.
Even Bernie doesn't know the max contribution limit, which is pretty funny.
You can contribute $100 million.
Wow.
That's a big issue. We don't talk about it enough. And then you can understand that if you're an ordinary person, who's going to listen to your interests, your needs, right? When billionaires are putting in this kind of money.
Right. If the best I can help you out with is $5,000, you might show up and shake my hand, but when the rickshaw hits the road or whatever, you're going to be working for the big dogs for the cash.
You got it. That's the way the system works.
And how do we change that?
Well, first of all, this campaign finance reform is a big deal. Just this one issue, and I'm glad you raised it. We got to do away with the citizens unit. We have to have restrictions. Okay. When I ran for president, the average contribution was $27. Okay. Roughly speaking, and we got millions of people to contribute. So I think there has to be a real stringent limit on the amount of money that any individual can put into the political process. And I also believe that we should move to what we call public funding of elections. You're a candidate, all right? You want to run for governor, you want to run for senator. If you show
everything I hear from him, even when he's being like genuinely unhinged, like he'll sometimes say something that like I feel like if anyone else was delivering that same speech, I'd be like, this is a racist guy. What the fuck? Or like, this is the most ableist motherfucker on the planet. Holy shit. But like he has a way of doing it in a way where he's like, I'm just a dumbass. And it just ends up being very funny. I don't know how he does it, but he is very consistent. And also, I think more importantly, he always does legitimately come across like he has an open mind.
The process is still democratic. Do you think it's still?
Yes and no. I mean, you want to run for office. Can you? Yeah, you can. You got a certain number of signatures. But if you're going to win, and I have 10 times more money than you do, I will beat you 95% of the time.
Wow.
I mean, that's a fact, right?
Right, 100%.
You'll beat me maybe if you're really an exceptional candidate and I'm a real idiot, you will beat me once in a while. But by and large, the money people will win. So if you're asking me, are we a democracy? In one sense, we are. All right, you can run for office. You can raise your issues. On the other hand, in terms of who has the real power, money people do. And I use the term oligarchy. An oligarchy is a society where small numbers of very wealthy people control the economic and political life of the country. I think we are moving rapidly in that direction.
Yeah, I feel like to me, it feels like almost privatized communism in a way.
Right. That's a very good point. It's a very good, it's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly sometimes everything of what communism is and what socialism is, but sometimes that's how it feels.
Well, let me give you an example. Can I pick up on your point?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I believe we are the only nation on earth, major nation, wealthy nation, that does not guarantee health care to all people. Okay? Get in your car, go 50 miles where you are sitting right now in Burlington, Vermont. You have a terrible automobile accident. You're in the hospital for a month in Canada. Do you know what the bill is when you come out? Zero.
Nothing.
Okay. Do you know how much the Canadians spend per person on healthcare compared to us? 1/2 as much. They spend half as much. You don't take out your wallet. If you get sick, you go to the doctor that you want. Okay. I believe in that type of system. They guarantee healthcare to all of their people. Mm-hmm. It's publicly funded the way we fund police departments, fire departments, and libraries. Okay. You got to pay taxes for it. But at the end of the day, it is less expensive for your healthcare. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're a proponent for healthcare for all, right?
I absolutely.
And yes, and you always have been. And but how the system seems so rigged because you have like one of the number one causes of bankruptcy in America is medical debt, right?
Yes.
Unbelievable. Like people can't, they go in, they don't even know the cost. They sign an agreement that they're going to be billed later, right? It's like, and then they get the bill and it's astronomical and they spend the rest of their life literally a slave to the healthcare system or to the medical billing system or the dealing with their insurance. And not to mention they're sick. So the added stress of that, it just feels like, like something so much better could be done.
Theo, that is so pathetic and so sick and so cruel. I mean, we did a hearing on this, and roughly speaking, and I know the viewers will think this is like hard to believe. Half of the people who are dealing with cancer, now cancer is a terrible disease, right? Your point.
100%.
You're struggling for your life, right?
Bad, yeah,
Maybe
bad.
you make it, maybe you don't. You got radiation, chemotherapy, bad stuff, right? Half the people who get cancer treatment either end up in bankruptcy or utilizing all of the financial resources of the family. They're depleted. They're broke. So imagine that. You go into the hospital. Doctor says, Theo, sorry, you got cancer, terrible. You're worried to death, right? Your friends, your family are worried. In order to pay medical bills. That is insane.
Yeah.
And it adds, if you're trying to deal with cancer, then you got to worry about financial stress.
I think the best part of this is that, like, if someone tried to, I guess, like, neo-lib pill Theo Von in the opposite direction, it would always fail because, like, the counter argument to what Bernie Sanders is saying, where he's, like, coming at this from a point of empathy, caring about the plight of the common man, and how damaging and how devastating it is when you are undergoing a phenomena that does not exist anywhere else in the developed world, medical bankruptcy, right? The counter narratives are almost always like profit motive driven. Like unless you're like a right winger and you're just like, well then, and you just start lying and say like, well, your taxes are going to be 90% and also there's not going to be a doctor and also they're going to kill you if you go to the hospital unless you're gay. And then if you're not gay, they're going to make you gay. They're going to sodomize you and then make you gay. Like, unless you just straight up make up examples, if you actually try to argue this from the perspective that like the Democratic Party tries to argue it on, it's almost always about the bottom line of like the pharmaceutical industry and private insurance, which absolutely zero people who are normal will give a fuck about. They'd be like, what are you saying to me? The right-wing counter to this is just like, doctors will make you homosexual. The neoliberal right-wing argument against it is like, what about the profits of the shareholders? What about the propaganda with Canada where you have to wait for a procedure? Great question. It is entirely due to right-wingers in Canada, both on the Liberal government and also the Conservatives, underfunding the social safety nets. Deliberately, mind you, so that people get resentment and develop resentment towards socialized medicine with the direct goal of trying to privatize key aspects of the industry, which is already happening in certain parts of Canada too. Like this is a deliberate method. You consistently underfund government funded healthcare. It becomes unmanageable. People start fucking dying. They develop resentment towards these institutions. They start saying, what the fuck is going on? Like, I can't get paid enough. Nurses and doctors are angry. They don't get paid enough. There's not enough staff on payroll on top of that. And then ultimately, the solution is privatization. They're doing this with the NHS. They're trying to do this with the NHS. They're trying to do this with socialized medicine in general. You're technically right, but healthcare is handled on a provincial level, so it's provincial right-wing / lib governments. Yes. That's exactly how it works.
$13,000. What does that mean? It means that the first...
Also, waiting is not for immediate life-saving. Like, you don't go into the hospital emergency room with a gunshot wound and they go, oh, come back in 3 weeks. That's not how this goes. Wait lists are for procedures, oftentimes elective procedures, or rather procedures that are still life-saving. It's still life-saving procedures, but it's not like immediate. You know what I mean? Like getting a hip replacement. So the question at that point becomes, would you rather wait a month or two to get this hip replacement? Or would you rather be able to get the hip replacement, maybe, if you have enough to pay for it, and then have a lifetime of medical debt as a consequence of it? Try to 6 to 9 months. Like I said, the wait list part of the equation, absolutely has everything to do with underfunding. Okay? That's it. Because there is obviously a finite amount of time and resources that you can spend on this process. So if there's a finite amount of time and resources, there's an allocation of resources that occurs. In the United States of America, the allocation of resources is not distributed by need, who needs this immediately, but by who can pay for it. Okay? The dynamic under capitalism is that the wealthy person's cat takes first priority over a hungry human. Okay? If there's only 2 bags of food, the wealthy person can buy a bag of food for themselves and a bag of food for their cat before you get a bag of food at all. In a socialist distribution, obviously, cuts would need to be made if there was a, this is a reductive argument, but if there was a cut that needed to be made, both humans would get a bag of food instead of the cat. No disrespect to the cat lovers in the chat.